start with John Davis Ramsay, 24th of the 4th, 1931 to the 7th of the 8th, 2020. John was the loving husband of Sue for almost 60 years, actually over 60 years.
No, almost 60.
Well, you met a couple of years before you got married, so technically speaking, there's a couple of years there to count for him.
No one's having her options open, mate.
Exactly. They're coming up to their 60th anniversary in December this year. He's the father of David and Karen, Marion, myself, Helen and Paul, and cherished papa to his grandchildren, Jasmine, Cheyenne, Matthew, Chinoni and Jamie, Bessie and Sam, Darcy and Holly, Sheridan, Samantha, April, Isabel, Jack and Lindy, and Tammy and Taylor. She was a great part to his great-grandchildren Ryan and Luke, Byron and Willow, and loved younger brother of Malcolm, deceased, Alistair, Helen, and best mate of Checkers. So we've got a few mediums here to read, so that's one. So, just a quick chronology of Dad. Dad was born in Moorhope and lived there till he was about 6 years old, and then the family moved to Taree. When Dad was about 3 years old, there'd been an incident which I'll get to actually, because his sister, Auntie Helen, has made some comments here which I'd like to read, and she's currently down in Sydney, so unfortunately she's not able to get to us. But moved to Taree for a number of years and did his schooling there, and then after that moved down to Sydney to the Sydney Uni to study his Bachelor of Education and become a teacher. From that point, Dad then got his first job out at Bulladilla, that's correct. He stayed out there for about 18 months. And then after that he was asked to go to Wollongong. Now, Dad wasn't a big fan of going to Wollongong. He sort of settled in Bulladilla and became quite comfortable, but because his brother Al had been out there a number of years before him, Malcolm had been out there a number of years before, Dad decided to go to Wollongong, where he quite enjoyed it and spent about 4 years out there. So, whilst Dad was at Wollongong, he came down to Sydney to attend a church camp on Shark Island in about 1958, and that's the same camp that my mum was also taken to by family to attend. So Mum had a couple of aunts which were pretty keen to get her out in the Christian community, and lo and behold, on Shark Island in 1958, she bumped into Dad. So the four aunts, getting their heads together, have gone, well, this looks like a bit of a good thing happening here. They seem to hit it off pretty well, so they've invited Dad back to Mum to their place to have dinner. So you can just imagine the four aunts, stirring it all up and going, right, let's go, we've got to keep it here. And off she goes. Mum was only 21 at the time, and Dad would have been in his late 20s. So, and as it turned out, 12 months later, they were engaged to be married. Now, Dad still had his teaching career in Wollongong, so it was not the days of emails and mobile phones back then. It was sort of sending the post by horse and carriage almost, and so they were writing profusely between each other, and any spare moment that Dad could get, he would shoot down to Sydney and spend time with Mum. So we found out later, which was quite amusing, that Mum's family actually knew Dad, and Dad was actually named after his wife's grandfather. I mean, what a small world. So basically, Mum's grandpa was named was John Davis, and being the traditional Ramsays, they'd been through the whole list of relatives and named all the kids after everybody, but Dad was the last one out, and they sort of didn't have one to go by. They really liked the minister there. So they've called him John Davis after his wife's grandfather. So I mean, the chances of that are just unbelievable. So, with the travelling coming backwards and forwards from Wollongong down to Sydney, once Mum and Dad got married, they shot off to New Zealand for their honeymoon and ended up staying there for about a year. When they came back to Australia, Dad ended up working as a teacher at East Hills Boys High in Sydney, and then went on to Ashworth Girls High for a number of years, of which there's been a number of people, including one of his granddaughters, who currently goes to that very school today. And
Who's here with us somewhere?
see April's over there,
Okay.
the Ashworth Girls High School.
Yes.
Ducks in the class. I wish. So then, whilst they were in Ashworth, they ended up adopting 4 kids, of which I am one. I mean, that just goes to show what sort of people Mum and Dad were. Dad especially, you know, they instead of having their own children, they adopted 4 kids from 4 separate families, 2 years apart, and that was the loving and caringness that they gave to us. And I tell you, I don't know where we'd be without them. So, dragging along 4 kids, all under about the age of 8, they headed up to Lismore. So a little funny story on the way to Lismore, there was the 4 kids, Mum and Dad, and the black cat. So we get into Lismore. I vaguely remember this too. I remember that house in Lismore that we went to. We get into Lismore, and a couple of streets away from when we were about to get to the house, the black cat jumps out the window. Gone. And so we were thinking, well, that's it. That's the cats are renowned to go back to places that they know. About 2 weeks later, Mum's sitting in the kitchen, hears a scratching on the window, and who should be there but the black cat? What was the cat's name?
Tory.
Tory. Had white feet.
Yes.
Yeah. So Tory found us in a town miles and miles away from where she'd been. So it just sort of went to show that the animal somehow found us, and Tory was with us for a number of years. Whilst in Lismore, Dad took a post at the North Rivers College of Advanced Education, and then helped assist with the starting of the Southern Cross Uni, which I believe now is a university in New England. That's probably had its name changed again since. So 18 years all up he spent in Lismore in the education department. The thing I think that nobody didn't know a lot of was Dad's philanthropy. He was a very humble man. You just didn't know what he was up to, but with his sister being a doctor and a missionary in India, he was very passionate about the third worlds and the Indian culture and having his sister there, and he assisted with sponsoring whole villages, independent families, just really, he was such a giving person, but you would never know. He never made anything about it. He didn't tell us much about it. But he has changed the lives of so many people over the years. Overseas and in countries that just don't have the facilities that we've got here. So after leaving Lismore after 18 years, Mum and Dad, we used to come down to Evans Head as kids, and Mum and Dad decided that they were going to retire down here. And it's been 30 odd years that they've now been down in Evans Head. And Dad was very passionate about the people and the places that he was around. He wanted to know the community, he wanted to support the community. He would somehow sniff out someone that was having a bad day and just happen to turn up on their doorstep and have a chat, He gave so much to his community and to his church. He was very passionate with his church. But getting him to buy a new washer for the dripping sink tap, forget it. He'd pull it apart, take skin off his fingers, put it all back together again, and it was still dripping probably 10 seconds slower, but you go, well, that'll do for now. And that was Dad through and through. He just would not, we'd say, Dad, just go and buy a new tap. And no, I've got something here that'll sort that out. David and I were going through the garage the other day and just looking at all the bits and pieces. There's old Venetian blinds there that are just absolutely destroyed, but there were 2 blinds on it that were good. So Dad would go, right, we'll keep that in case we need a blind. We've got one. We'll pull it all apart. It'll take you half a day. You'll probably be able to fit it in there, but lo and behold, that's what Dad would do. He was very frugal with his money and very just thought, well, no, I'm going to get in there and fix this myself. I don't need to call a tradesman over. I don't need any assistance. It was just, I'll do it my way, and I've got every little bit and piece here that we can do that with. I guess Dad was very loving of his family. They would drop anything and come and help. Dad had a tolerance and a patience for certain members of the family, and there was nothing that he wouldn't do. Family to him was everything, and our family grew and grew and grew over the years. We brought in people from refuges on a number of occasions that we would help home. Little kids that didn't have parents and needed somewhere to stay safely for a couple of nights. And all those people became members of our family, and to this day we still have very strong relationships with a lot of those people. People that Dad knew from his early days are still to this day, 40, 50 odd years later, very, very close and still connected. It's unfortunate that COVID has hit because this room would be overflowing with the amount of people that he has touched. But to him it was just the day in the life of his life. It's what he did. He did not expect anything for it. He just wanted to help and do what he could do to make others' lives better. Because that was his way. That's what he learned through Christ. And you know, the 10 Commandments are a beautiful thing. I have to admit I've never followed them as much as I should, but Dad was a stickler for them, and that just showed who he was as a man and who he was as a family man. I've got something here from his sister who's 92, currently down in Kalara. And I'll just bring that up and I'll give this a read. So this is Helen Ramsay.